Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now, as you know, Mercedes discontinued the AMG GT. I think it was 2020 or something like that, a couple of years ago now, but there will be a new one shortly, and we've seen a lot of spy photos and videos that I'm going to show you in this video, and then I'm going to try to de-camouflage this car and render it in Photoshop to what I believe the next generation AMG GT will look like. So first of all, let's have a look at what this actually is and what we know so far. So this is an article from Car and Driver, and they say that the next generation Mercedes AMG GT has been spy testing in both the GT53 and the GT63 versions. That's good news. The design looks largely the same as the SL, and it's going to share the same platform with the SL. However, the GT is going to remain a dedicated sports car, and the SL, as we know, is more of a luxury cruiser. So the new AMG GT is going to share some of its design with the 2022 Mercedes AMG SL, but Mercedes has promised that it will remain differentiated from the convertible Grand Tourer, despite the SL joining as an AMG now from model year 2022. So it's going to be interesting to see those differences, and they say they look pretty much the same. It could basically be an SL with a hardtop, but when I look at the spy photos, it definitely looks different than the SL, specifically the headlights, and that's something I'm going to show you in more detail when we analyze these spy photos from front, side, and rear in Photoshop before we jump in to the rendering. There were two prototypes here. You have the GT53 and the GT63, and the more powerful 63 features a more rectangular exhaust pipes versus the round units that you have on this 53. The overall body of the GT looks similar to that of the SL, but the sharply angled, I think they're supposed to say headlights here, are slightly reshaped, while the taillights appear more rectangular than the SL's triangular units. And I think the AMG GT, I'm pretty sure it's going to take a lot of inspiration from the four-door AMG GT, both in front, specifically the front graphics such as the headlights, and also the rear graphics such as the taillights. Going to be almost identical to the AMG GT four-door in my opinion. We're going to have to see if I'm right or wrong with that when it gets closer to launch. The GT will be powered by the same 4-liter twin-turbo V8 as the SL, and that means that the SL55, it has 469 horsepower, and the 63 has 577 horsepower. There are also rumors about a hybrid version with this V8, and in addition to an electric motor, that's going to have around somewhere around 800 horsepower. So that's going to be probably the top of the line for a very long time when it comes to the new AMG GT. And here's the interesting part when it comes to the differentiation between the GT and the SL. The GT will be more of a hardcore design and more of a race car or sports car than the SL. I think that's a good thing. We want to have the hardtop coupe be more of a proper race car than the convertible SL. Obviously, that's how it's always been. I think that they should continue that trend, and it looks like that's exactly what they're gonna do. Now here it says that the GT is expected to ditch the SL's small rear seats and will also likely weigh less without the power-operated soft top. However, they then clarified this, that the dealer source reached out to Car and Driver and clarified that the next generation AMG GT will actually feature a 2+2 layout with small rear seats, and that's to compete with the 911 more directly. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look at, I want to show you this because I think it's an interesting analysis to have a look at the old generation SL and compare it to the old or the only version of the AMG GT and the differences between the two, which I think is going to carry over to the newer generations as well. So up top here we have, of course, the 2020 Mercedes SL right here. I think it's a really nice, graceful looking design. It looks good still. What dates it a little bit, in my opinion, is this on the side, this graphic. This looks a little dated by today's standard, and I don't think this is something that we're gonna see in the AMG GT, in the new one, for example. But we do have some weird lines in the side of the, if you look at the spy photos, we're going to look at that after this. We're going to show you some weird things going on in the side that I can't really tell what's going on there, and it's going to be interesting to see what they actually have underneath that camo on the side specifically. More on that in just a second. But comparing these two, you can see clearly here that the AMG GT is clearly more of a race car or a sports car than the cruiser like SL up here, and I think that's the way it should be. You have a different front face, more aggressive front face in the AMG GT with a bigger grille, and it also sits a lot lower and it also sticks out further than the SL up here. The SL looks more almost like it could be almost like a CLK or something like that. Not really that sporty attitude in the front end that we have in the AMG GT. And that is also emphasized even more if you go to the lower half of the front end, looking at the front intake. You have a lot more protruding front end and intakes on the AMG GT, which also adds to this aggressive feeling in the front face. The overall proportions as well, looking at where the A-pillars start, this is a big deal. This starts a lot further than it does on the AMG GT, where they pulled back the A-pillar all the way to this point, creating this super long hood, which gives it classic sport car proportions. And I remember when this first came out in 2015-16 and I first saw it online, I thought it was one of the most beautiful modern Mercedeses. And I think it's still today, this design just looks proper sports car-like, and it kind of has those timeless proportions that I feel, looking at the spy photos, will carry over to the next generation as well. So here we have the spy photos, and here you can see that this is a yellow car because it forgot or maybe didn't care to camouflage the roof there. But looking at this design, you can clearly see that the headlights here does not look like the ones that we have on the SL. Here we have them be more of a triangular shape and more of a stretched out vertically than we have on the SL. The SL's headlights, as you can see right here, let's pop that in, very narrow style headlights on the SL, as you can see right here. I don't think we're gonna have the same kind of style on the AMG GT. I think they're gonna be more round, or they're gonna fill up more of a volume looking at it from a straight front view than the Mercedes SL. And then looking at the intakes right here, yeah, you can clearly see that the grille is stretching pretty much like we have on the new SL, so that they will have in common. And obviously, you need to you can kind of figure out where the cooling areas are and the intakes are, because you have to have these holes in the camouflage. So I'm thinking it's gonna look a lot like the AMG GT 4-door and a mix of that and the new SL as well. So an intake that looks something like this with a grille that's kind of inverted, where you have the lines of the sides going up this way, as we have on modern SLs as well. Overall, the front end is going to be very similar to the Mercedes SL. I think the major differences are going to happen in the headlights, where they're going to look more like this, like we have on the AMG GT 4-door, where you have this LED similar to what we're going to have in the new AMG GT, but also stretched out further and higher this way, and not be cut off like we have on the new SL. So I think if you want to know what the new headlights on the AMG GT are going to look like, I think this is very close, and also in the rear end have a very similar design to what we have on this AMG GT 4-door here as well. As you can see on the spy shots when we go to the rear view, they're very stretched out, elongated taillights, not like we have on the Mercedes SL, with have the same style as the headlights as well in the rear end. But here we have them be more of almost two light bars in each corner of the car, and I actually think that looks a lot better than the Mercedes SL taillights. This looks more classic, more timeless, and also follows the body lines well. Looking at it from a side view, I'm not sure if the A-pillar has been moved forward here a little bit, because I feel like the hood, it's a little shorter in this version, this second generation, than it is on the first generation, but I could be wrong. It still looks like a proper coupe, these lines. If you just sketched out these lines with the outline and silhouette of the new AMG GT, everybody's gonna know that it's a front engine two-door sports car just by looking at the proportions of a few key lines in this design. But I want to show you this weird detail that we have in the side, which I can't figure out what exactly this is, because it doesn't suit the line flow of current Mercedeses, and it doesn't suit the line flow of this car in specific as well. So you can see where the light hits here, it looks like it is a line, sharp line going in this direction, and then there is a sharp line going in this direction. I think this is just a play with lighting, and I don't think we're actually going to have body lines in the car on the side that looks like this. So I'm going to ignore this shot and remove these lines, because if I put them in, it's going to look very, very weird in this design. So that's not something I want to have in my render. So with that said, let's jump in and continue here in Photoshop and see what this AMG GT could look like if we remove the camo and bring out this beautiful yellow color that I love about the previous generation AMG GT, and that's the color I want for this render as well. So as I said, starting out here, we need to figure out the taillights, because it's not going to have the same taillight as the SL. I think maybe, I don't think they're going to copy paste the AMG GT 4-door taillights onto this, but they're gonna be very, very close when this car gets unveiled. You're gonna definitely recognize the tail end as an AMG GT, whether it be a 2-door or 4-door. I think it's gonna be more connected in the graphics to the AMG GT 4-door than it will to the Mercedes AMG SL, and that goes for the front end as well. I think we're gonna have a very similar style grille to what we have on the SL, but the headlights are not gonna be close to what the Mercedes SL has with those triangular headlights. As I said, I think we're gonna have more AMG GT 4-door style headlights, and looking at it when I render this, it just fits the overall styling of this car, and I think it looks better than the SL Mercedes to have these headlights that don't really clash as much as the SL headlights. Because as I said, if you watch my SL review video, one problem I had with the front end is that I think the headlights are too sharp for the rest of the graphics. And what I mean by that is the corners of the headlights are very, very sharp. It's almost a perfect triangle, and each corner is super sharp. And looking at the rest of the graphics of the car, for example, the massive grille in the middle, or the lower part air intakes and the graphics that's around those intakes, they're a lot smoother than the headlights on the SL. So having the AMG GT 4-door headlight style on the new AMG GT, I think that's gonna suit the design more than if they were to just pick the AMG SL headlights onto this design. Overall, I think Mercedes is doing a fantastic job with their designs right now. What's really confusing though to me is how they are so different when it comes to their EVs. For example, the EQS compared to the S-Class, and the EQ series compared to the regular internal combustion series cars. They just look like two completely different brands, and I wish Mercedes would go into a philosophy of creating EVs that look more in line with their internal combustion engines. I do realize that it's all about drag, and I heard somewhere that the EQS is the lowest wind resistant car ever produced, so they have to have a clear function to why they are all this bean shape, typical EV shape. But still, I do really love what the Mercedes is doing with their normal internal combustion cars. The EQS and the EQ series is probably gonna grow on me over time. I'm starting to see them now out here on the streets, and they look better in person than they do on video and photos and so on. And I do think the new AMG GT is gonna be an absolute stunner when it gets released. It's gonna take the best bits from the SL. So the proportions, we're gonna add a hardtop, which creates this beautiful flow from the roofline down, and then you have almost this 911 sloping rear end into these beautiful taillights that sets a clear stop or end point for that line. In addition to this long, super long AMG GT hood, which finishes off with this beautiful Mercedes grille in the front end. This, in combination with these headlights that I prefer from the AMG GT 4-door, I think it's gonna make a really gorgeous package overall, and a clean style. And I also like that they have one single key line that is sharp on the body, and that is the one that goes between the axles at the lower part of the car. It just sets a nice base for the car, and it shows that you really don't have to have a lot of sharp lines, for example, over the rear and the front fenders. I'm really looking forward to seeing this when it gets unveiled and how close this is to the actual car. I really can't wait to see what it will look like. I know for sure it's gonna be a stunner, as I said, because no matter what you do graphically with these type of proportions, you basically can't go wrong. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed this video. It really means a lot to me, and of course the YouTube algorithm as well. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.